From Google Earth, it looks like a good idea. Dense housing close to a light rail station in South Charlotte, next to an existing neighborhood, with a school nearby that families could walk to. Less parking than the standard suburban development, more public spaces, a transit connection that means you could, in theory, commute to Uptown without a car. On the map, this is the kind of development that urban planners point to when they say suburbia is getting better. Then you arrive. The path from the light rail station to the development is closed. The detour adds significant time to a morning walk that was supposed to be a quarter of a mile. The streets inside the development are quiet in a way that feels less like a peaceful neighborhood and more like a place where nobody has found a reason to go outside yet. Every building is the same design in different colors. The public spaces exist, but feel like they were placed on the site plan to satisfy a checklist rather than because anyone thought carefully about how people would use them. The playground has one tree, one small tree. In Charlotte, where summer temperatures regularly exceed 90 degrees, the playground is effectively an outdoor oven from June through September. This development is called Blue South. It is where Netflix filmed the Charlotte season of Love is Blind. The couples who lived here while deciding whether to get married to strangers they had never seen occupied townhomes that cost around $2,600 a month to rent. You cannot buy one. Every unit in the development is owned by a corporate landlord. One can only speculate about whether the liminal quality of the environment affected the relationships. Blue South is not a Charlotte story. Over 110,000 build-to-rent developments are currently under construction across the United States. Build-to-rent housing starts peaked at nearly 124,000 units in 2023, representing about 13% of all single-family housing starts nationally. Texas is leading with 21,800 homes under development. Florida and Arizona are close behind. The average age of a first-time home buyer in America has risen to 38, pushed back a decade by student debt and high interest rates. An entire generation that would have been buying entry-level homes in their late 20s is now renting them instead, and the build-to-rent industry has built itself specifically to service that market. What is happening in South Charlotte is happening everywhere. The transit situation is worth understanding precisely, because it is the difference between a genuinely useful feature and a marketing claim. The development sits less than a quarter mile from the I-485 light rail station, the last stop on the Blue Line. In principle, a resident could walk to the platform every morning, take the train to Uptown, and never need a car for the commute. In practice, the direct path was closed during the visit, forcing a route that was not practical for anyone trying to get to work in the morning, which is, you could argue, a minor operational issue on a specific day. But it reveals something about how the transit connection was conceived. As a feature to list in the leasing brochure, rather than as a piece of infrastructure, the development was designed around. The pedestrian infrastructure required to make that proximity meaningful was not there. The station was. The path to the station was not. This is the first and most fundamental failure of what planners call transit-oriented development. Being near a transit station is not the same as being connected to one. The distance between the front door and the platform matters less than whether the walk is direct, comfortable, and clearly signed. A quarter-mile walk on a well-designed path takes about 5 minutes. A quarter-mile detour on an unclear route through a suburban site takes significantly longer, feels uncertain, and most people will not do it on a cold February morning when they are already running late. The result is a development that lists rail access as a feature while functioning, in practice, as another car-dependent suburban environment. The train exists. The connection to the train does not. And if you are paying $2,600 a month partly because the leasing agent mentioned the light rail, you are paying for something that requires a longer walk than was suggested. Inside the development, the buildings are made of vinyl siding over plywood framing, which is standard for this type of construction and is worth naming plainly because it matters for what these places will look like in 20 years. Call it the plywoodification of everything. The 1990s apartment complexes visible nearby were built the same way, and they have aged into the kind of buildings that nobody is particularly proud of. These will follow the same trajectory. The difference is that the 1990s complexes rented for significantly less money. The units themselves are, to be fair, inoffensive. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, around 2,300 square feet. Garages at the back rather than the front, which is correct. Balconies also at the back, which creates what the narrator calls the mullet problem. Business in the front, depression in the back. The street-facing facades have been given slight architectural attention. The back faces, where residents actually spend time on their balconies, have not. The HVAC units are exposed to the street with wires visible. One building has fake windows applied to its surface, which are exactly what they sound like. Decorative elements that look like windows but are not windows, glued onto the facade to give the impression of detail that does not exist. There's no variation between units. Same design, minor color shifts, different arrangement of the same materials. The result is a street that accommodates exactly one income bracket and one household type, because the product was built for a specific spreadsheet. Mixing unit sizes, types, and prices would have produced a more interesting street in a more diverse community. It would also have complicated the asset management for the institutional investor who owns the whole development. Uniformity is easier to underwrite. The public spaces are where the promises of this type of development most visibly fall apart. The playground has one young tree and no shade structure. On a hot day, no child is using it. The young trees planted throughout the site will take years to mature, long enough that many residents will have moved in and out before the canopy provides meaningful relief. Charlotte is a southern city, and an unshaded playground is effectively closed from late spring through early fall. This is not a minor design note. It is a flat surface surrounded by vinyl walls that sits unused for 6 months of the year. The gazebo in the third section of the development offers a view of a drainage pond, not a designed water feature with landscaping and seating that makes the water feel intentional. A drainage pond, functional and gray, doing its job of managing stormwater while providing one of the less appealing vistas available in the development. The public spaces that do work are the community garden, which is genuinely well executed, a rare bright spot in the development that someone clearly thought about. The amenities at the clubhouse, a pool, a basketball court, a putt-putt course, photograph extremely well. They are also clustered at the clubhouse, which is the space designed to convert potential renters into actual renters, not the space where people who already live there spend their afternoons. The rest of the development is outnumbered by leftover spaces. Leftover spaces are what happens when a development is laid out to manage difficult topography rather than to create a connected pedestrian environment. They are the areas between buildings that have no defined purpose, no seating, no programming, no reason to be there other than that the topography made building on them impractical. Walking through them produces a weird feeling of not being supposed to be there, even though you are in a residential neighborhood. Urban planners sometimes call these liminal spaces, the charm of an office park and the foot traffic of a data center. These areas exist because the development prioritized navigating the site's hills over creating a coherent grid that would have connected the 3 sections of the neighborhood more directly. There is leftover land that serves no one. The most significant failure is at the edge of the development, where it meets the existing neighborhood on the hill above it. The development cleared the trees that had existed between the two communities. There is no stairway connecting the hill to the development below. The retaining wall between them creates a physical cliff. The existing houses, which had been surrounded by mature trees and nature, now look directly down onto a plastic-sided development with no way to access it. A vignette, described as a viewing point, was created overlooking the new development. It is the only gesture toward acknowledging the existing neighborhood's presence. None of this happened. The development opened itself toward the industrial areas and the highway and closed itself toward the people who were already there. The management company's primary stakeholder relationship is with the institutional investor who owns the asset. The existing neighborhood on the hill is not a stakeholder in that relationship. The rental-only question is worth taking seriously as something beyond a personal preference. People have less stake in the future of their neighborhood when they are renting. This is not a hot take. If you do not own something, you have less reason to fight for it, maintain it, or stay long enough to watch it change. In a professionally managed build-to-rent community where leases turn over on schedule and the landlord is a corporation with a portfolio of thousands of units across multiple states, the relationship between resident and neighborhood is transactional by design. This matters more now than it might have 20 years ago because renting is no longer a temporary condition for many Americans. A significant portion of the people in a development like this are not saving to buy a house. They are renting because buying has been priced out of reach by the same dynamics that made the build-to-rent industry profitable. Just 3 corporations control over 19,000 single-family rentals in Atlanta. Institutional investors represented approximately a quarter of all single-family home buyers in Atlanta and Jacksonville in 2022, buying homes at the lower price points where first-time buyers compete and turning them into rentals. The industry built the demand conditions for its own product and is now renting those conditions back to the people who created them. Is suburbia getting better? The honest answer is slightly, and in the wrong ways. Less parking than a 1990s development, more public spaces, even if those spaces are poorly designed. Transit proximity that is real even when the connection is not. A density that, on paper, represents improvement over the low-rise sprawl it replaced. These are genuine, if modest, improvements. But the materials are cheaper. The design is more uniform. The ownership structure means that no resident will ever build equity in this neighborhood, and the corporate owner's relationship with the development is fundamentally different from a homeowner's relationship with a house. The existing neighborhood was treated as something to be managed rather than connected with. The playground has one tree. This development will be renovated or sold or demolished in 30 years, or maybe 20, when the vinyl siding looks like the 1990s apartment complexes that already dot the landscape around it, and the asset reaches the end of its useful life for the investor who owns it. The residents will find somewhere else to rent. The existing neighborhood on the hill will still be there, looking down at whatever comes next. That is not a suburb getting better. That is a suburb being replaced with a product that photographs better on the day it opens and is designed to be owned by an institution rather than inhabited by a community. The difference between those two things is visible the moment you step through the gap between two buildings and find yourself standing next to a drainage pond with nowhere to sit.